Good afternoon, everyone. It's just gone 1 o'clock, so we're live across Facebook, LinkedIn, and also on YouTube. So good afternoon. Hope everybody is keeping well. Little bit of a disaster. I did all my notes for today's little talk, and I have managed to lose them just before going live. So rather than be late, which I normally am quite late, I decided I'm going to persevere. I'm going to crack on through and hopefully cover as many subjects as I can. On this topic I'm looking at today, which is basically if you are an employee, what kind of expenses you can claim. I know we obviously already normally talk about the approach for businesses. So if you're a business, what's tax deductible? But a couple of questions that come up recently from startups, basically, who might still be employed, wondering about whether there's some expenses that they can claim back from their employers or from HMRC. From when they're employed. So yeah, I thought I'd do 5 minutes or so on this today. So again, as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop me a message in the comment box, whether it's on YouTube or LinkedIn or on Facebook. It should all come through to me. Sometimes it pops up with a little memo to authorize me to see who you are on StreamYard, but otherwise, yeah, crack on, and if there's any questions, drop it through. So what are we talking about today? As I said, we're looking at expenses for employees. So it is possible, if you are an employee, that you could potentially be claiming back some tax on the expenses that you incur. And that's basically where you've used your own money to buy things for your job, and you only use these things for your job. You can't claim it back if your employer has already reimbursed you. That's a no-no. And also, if your employer has provided you some equipment, for example, like a laptop, and you've decided you actually want an alternative one. For example, if they give you a Windows laptop, but you want a MacBook, then you pay for it yourself, you can't claim that back because your employer has actually given you equipment that would be suitable for your job there. The other thing, just to kind of flag up, is what we're talking here is claiming tax back on expenses. If you don't actually pay tax, so at the moment that is earning less than 12,500, then you cannot actually recover any tax because you haven't paid it in the first place. So that's the first thing to mention. When you go through this process of kind of looking at your expenses and seeing if there is anything, you can actually get it updated in the current year, and you can even go back up to 4 tax years as well. So it just means that if there is anything relevant for you that you have missed and perhaps you haven't claimed before, you can go back up to 4 tax years. So it can be a nice little claim. So the first thing I was going to mention today is about working from home. So you can claim tax relief if you are required to work at home because your job requires you to work away from home, because basically it might be far away, you might be kind of doing it remotely, or if your employer doesn't have an office. Obviously, there was a time during the pandemic where you could probably claim, pretty much most people were able to claim allowance for working at home. And no, Martin Lewis was really good about mentioning that. So I think a lot of people did claim that. Unfortunately, now we're kind of in that post-COVID era. You cannot claim tax relief for working at home if your employment contract lets you do work at home. So you're actually allowed to do that, incur that. So it's kind of built in. If you work at home because of COVID, that's obviously, we're now post-COVID stage. And if your employer has an office, but you can't go there sometimes because it's full, you also cannot claim the tax relief for that. Also, I mean, there are 2 kind of ways of doing this when it comes to kind of claiming it. There is the flat rate, which is £6 a week. So that used to be £4 a week. That was increased in April 2020 during COVID, the lockdowns. So yeah, so you can actually claim £6 a week. Obviously, that is a cost. The tax relief on that is 20% of that. So it's basically £1.20 potentially per week that you could claim. You can actually look at an alternative way. So you can actually look at the actual costs of gas and electricity for your work area. So you look at your overall home, you look at how much you're using for the business, and then you look at those kind of variable costs. Obviously, we've talked before about the tax allowances for self-employed, and that's a lot more generous. But as an employee, you can only reclaim any kind of utility costs and maybe your business element of your broadband and phone line. So there is a lot more less, but you can actually claim actual costs. In reality, the easy way of doing it is just to do it on the flat rate, which is £6 per week. And that has been for the last 3 years, and I don't think that'll be changing anytime soon. A few other things that you might, again, if you, you might see adverts on TV, or adverts on whilst you're online for various kind of tax allowances sort of things you can claim. So uniforms, work clothing and tools, obviously generally those are provided by your employers, so you can't claim any of that. However, if you do have to provide specialist tools, if you're a chef, for example, and you've got your own knives, a hairdresser and your scissors, and you have to maintain that as well, those are all kind of expenses that if you pay for them personally, and you own those assets personally, but you're employed, you potentially could be claiming those as tax relief. Again, PPE, if you're a builder, or someone who needs to have, for example, steel toe cap shoes, then that's another sort of expense that if you incur that personally, then you can claim that back as a tax deduction. That was that. So I said, if you're just caught up, I actually lost my original notes. So I'm waffling a little bit and just trying to do it all from memory. Mileage as well, that's another area where we see that people do claim a lot or not potentially. So we have an allowance for 45p per mile. That's the government rates for mileage. 45p per mile for the first 10,000 miles, and then 25p per mile above that. If there are any other employees in the car with you, you can claim an extra 5p per mile on top of that allowed rate. Obviously, the employer isn't obligated to pay you that. That is an approved mileage rate by HMRC. If there is a variation on that, so for example, your employer might only pay you 25p per mile, that means there's 20p difference there. You can, again, apply to HMRC to get the tax back and let them know about this kind of variation, because you are slightly out of pocket, you're paying too much tax, so potentially that you could get that back. I think those were and the other things were professional fees and subscriptions. So if you are, for example, I'm an accountant, I pay an annual membership fee for being a chartered accountant, and that I can claim that back because I have to do my job as a chartered accountant. I have to pay my membership fees to stay as a chartered accountant. So therefore, that is an allowable expense. Again, if you are examples. Bookkeeping institute, that sort of thing. So again, professional bodies is what I'm trying to say. I think those are the key areas. Obviously, the big thing is if you have got any of those, how do you claim it? So I've got a couple of links on. So first one, I've created a short link on the screen now. So bit.ly/A4E claim expenses. So if you go on that link, that will take you to the government website, and you can go on there and you can go through the process to explain what it is that you want to be claiming and work your way through there. So that's bit.ly/A4E expenses. If you prefer, you can actually give HMRC a call, and it's 0300 200 3300. That line should still be open. I've talked before about HMRC not being particularly helpful or useful at the moment with regards to correspondence and taking forever to reply to letters and answer the phone. Well, it's got even worse recently as they've actually closed the self-assessment helpline. But I believe this line is still open, so if you would prefer to do it like that, obviously they are trying to push people to do it more and more online. So if I pop the other link back up, that is the bit.ly/A4E claim expenses. Generally, they'll pay your refunds. As I mentioned earlier on, you can go back up to 4 years, so you can get a refund on those previous expenses, and they'll adjust your tax code. So what will happen is you won't have to go and do this form each year to make sure you get your refund. It will just be adjusted through your tax code, and then you'll effectively get that extra bit of payment. So you'll pay a little bit less tax each month as a result. Just the quick one to mention is if your circumstances do change, to make sure you let HMRC know, and then they'll correct your tax code again. We have had people that have realised that they've been claiming, like I mentioned, that difference on the mileage. They've changed jobs. They're now being paid 45p per mile, but HMRC have still adjusted their tax code to assume that they're actually only getting 25p or less than what they should be. So again, if your circumstances change, do let HMRC know so you're not overclaiming the tax back, and you don't really want anything to come back and bite you in the bum in the future. So yeah, that is my quick kind of rundown, nearly kind of just under 10 minutes. Like I said, if you do have any questions, feel free to drop me a message anywhere, whether it's on any of the platforms, or send me a message either, private message. I'm happy to answer any questions. But yeah, back again next Tuesday, 1 p.m. Haven't quite decided on the topic yet, but like I said, I wish I hadn't done it committed this week, because otherwise it would be a lot easier. But yeah, I will be back again. Like I said, I have waffled a little bit, so if I missed any areas that you think would be really useful, please do let me know, and I'll make sure I cover it again in a future one. Brilliant. Well, have a great week, everyone. I will catch up with you soon. Cheers, bye.